Hello, all, to a and welcome, excuse me, to another episode of the Insomniac's Graveyard Podcast. Um, I'm gonna start this episode by reading an excerpt from a biography of uh, of Ernest Hemingway, titled "Writer, Sailor, Soldier, and Spy" by Nicholas Reynolds. Americans started to worry about German submarines in home waters after the war in Europe started in September 1939. The Hemingways were prominent among them. In December 1939, Ernest told his brother Leicester about a young Englishman who had a title, a bank account, and a naval intelligence assignment. Tall, slim, stylish, and perhaps a little arrogant. Sir Anthony Jenkinson, Tony only to his friends, was a passably good writer with two adventure travel books to his credit by 1940. Only later would Hemingway call Tony a non-fighter and vague prick behind his back. Now Jenkinson was looking for someone who liked sailing, could navigate, and wanted to do something adventurous. An invitation that sounded like many other wartime recruiting pitches for intelligence work and appealed to men like Ernest and Leicester. The typical pitch could be summed up as, "We can't tell you exactly what you'll be doing until after you agree to it, but we guarantee that it will be exciting." The concept was for them to sail around the Western Caribbean and look for possible and actual German subbases. Ernest helped to outfit the expedition. Ernest could be very hard on the much younger Leicester, who was born in 1915, scathing in his criticism, dictatorial with his advice, but this season he was his most considerate self. A picture of them in Havana Harbor shows the Hemingway brothers and Gellhorn drinking beer while they work on the 12-ton wooden schooner that looks small and best suited for day trips close to land, not a long voyage across the Caribbean. Everyone is smiling. Leicester looks almost enough like Ernest to be his double, but the body language makes it clear who's in charge. Leicester was in Ernest's debt, and he knew it, writing later that he could not thank Ernest enough for the hundreds of dollars and the unbuyable help. Outfitting the schooner took somewhere between a few days and a few weeks, enough time for the brothers to have many dinners together, and for the young sailors to help Ernest entertain his publisher, Charles Scribner. Once they were ready to sail in early 1940, Leicester and Jenkinson plotted a course that would take the Blue Stream into barely charted waters. They entered quiet bay and estuaries and landed on remote islands, places where the two young adventurers encountered smugglers, profiteers, and unusual people, some of them obviously European transplants. Ernest corresponded with Leicester and Tony once they were sailing, offering bits of advice and encouragement. Upon their return, they wrote an article for Reader's Digest that they had discovered Nazi agents, Nazi propaganda, and stocks of diesel oil waiting for Nazi raiders. The article concluded that they had witnessed preparations for German naval action off the coast of Central America. The amateur spies offered their observations to naval intelligence, at least on the American side of the water. Their work was not well received. Rear Admiral T.J. Wilkinson wrote that after careful study, the Office of Naval Intelligence, ONI, did not believe that Leicester was likely ever to collect any useful naval, hydrographic, and subversive information. The Admiral was partly right. Tony and Leicester's conclusions were far-fetched. The Germans had never had an organized shore establishment in the Caribbean. As the young man had claimed, for most of the war, German subs were resupplied by other submarines, not by sympathizers on shore. But Admiral Wilkinson could have been more charitable. He made it sound as if Tony and Leicester were operating on the fringe. In fact, they and Ernest were in good company. At least since 1940, Embassy Havana had shared their concerns. Early on, the mission had wanted to know about Leicester and Tony's quest. Hemingway reported to his mother in July 1940 from the finca that the U.S. authorities here were very pleased with his work. Phantom submarines played a role in the spy scare that had led to the creation of the Crook Factory. Perhaps the Germans were putting spies ashore from submarines. This is one of the things that Hemingway was exploring when he stationed agents like R-42 along the coast to watch for any signs of sub-to-shore activity. Then there were the persistent rumors about colonies of Axis sympathizers along the coast who maintained secret supply depots for the German Navy. The submarine threat itself was far from imaginary. In early 1942, there were not enough U.S. Navy or Coast Guard ships and planes to patrol the shipping lanes. After Pearl Harbor, the young, aggressive German skippers began to take full advantage of what they came to call the happy time along the East Coast. It was so much more pleasant then and often just as productive as the war in the North Atlantic. They could position themselves in deeper water east of the coastal shipping lanes and wait until a freighter came into view to fire a spread of torpedoes. Sometimes at night, the targets were backlit by oceanside cities like Miami, where there was no blackout. It was as if the Germans were both spectators and actors in a deadly light show. Farther south, the situation was not as dire, but there were both sightings and sinkings off the Cuban coast, eventually peaking around 15 sinkings a month in the spring of 1942. Almost every day, red-eyed survivors covered in fuel oil and molasses. The cargo of many ships carried from Cuba landed in Havana and found shelter at Hemingway's old haunt downtown, the Hotel Ambos Mundos. To respond to the crisis, Embassy Havana came up with much the same approach as the U.S. Navy did for the East Coast. The overstretched Navy had called on civilian sailors to patrol the Atlantic shoreline with their own boats and keep an eye out for periscopes or submarines on the surface. They were to report any sightings without attacking the enemy. This semi-official initiative, which ran through the third quarter of 1943, came to be called Hooligan's Navy, as an assorted collection of yachtsmen and Sunday sailors who would serve with distinction and verve if not effectiveness. A little more than a month into the war, the ambassador in Havana said he wanted something similar. In January 1942, he wrote Washington that the submarine menace was coming more close every day. The solution he recommended was for the Navy to take over some cabin cruisers, outfit them with a weapon or two, and turn them over to the Cubans to run as patrol boats. It is not exactly clear how and when Hemingway developed the specific idea of taking Pilar to war in this way. Leicester's adventure played a role. Hemingway was willing to grant that his brother did not do too bad a job on what he called your snoop cruise. He still had a way to go, but he was learning how to spy. His exact words were that Tony and Leicester's work had grown steadily less childish over time. But he revealed that he was disappointed they had not had more violent contact with the enemy. For Hemingway, the perfect mission would be one that started with some kind of spying, and then ended in the destruction of the enemy. This concept of operations started to take shape when John Thomason and Hemingway first met in Washington in June 1941. Hemingway told Thomason about Leicester's Odyssey, and they discussed a possible follow-on mission, this time under the auspices of O&I. The upshot was that Ernest told Leicester to get a haircut, wash her face good, and then go talk to Thomason, offering to place the Blue Stream and her crew at his disposal. At some point, almost predictably, the focus shifted from Leicester to Ernest. The Baron, as Ernest liked to call his younger brother, wound up taking a war job in Washington, D.C. for 2 years and did not go back to sea. But Hemingway himself also had a boat that he could put on at O&I's disposal, and Thomason and Hemingway moved to exploring her potential for doing the job. Perhaps unaware of his background, Ambassador Braden would claim that the plan had been hatched in his office in Havana, much like that for the Crook Factory. In his memoirs, he has Hemingway virtually demanding a quid pro quo for those patriotic services as factory head. According to Braden, Hemingway said, "Now I want to be paid for all the work I've done." When Braden asked him how he wanted to be repaid, Hemingway went on to describe how Pilar would find and sink U-boats, and summed it all up with a martial flourish. "I can really have myself a party provided you will get me a bazooka to punch holes in the side of the submarine, machine guns to mow down the people on the deck, and hand grenades to lob down the conning tower." The ambassador knew that what Hemingway wanted was against all regulations, but since he had done such an outstanding job at the Crook factory, Braden was willing to scrap the regulations and underwrite the new initiative. Hemingway appreciated the support, and as long as the operation lasted, felt that he was working for the ambassador. High-level support from the right people still mattered to him. So that was an excerpt from a biography of Ernest Hemingway, titled "Writer, Sailor, Soldier, Spy." Particularly, it covered what the book jacket calls Ernest Hemingway's Secret Adventures, 1935 to 1961. The book was written, well researched, I might add, and written by Nicholas Reynolds, who I believe is a historian. And if you've read Ernest Hemingway, or if you like Ernest Hemingway, which I assume many people do, since I believe his writing style is palatable to pretty much anyone. This biography may be of some interest to you. Maybe it allows you to learn new information about one of your favorite writers, or maybe it reaffirms what you had already known or learned in the past about who Hemingway was during a majority of his years. So, yeah, this is another episode of the Insomniac's Graveyard Podcast. I believe episode 8. I could be mistaken. I'm your host, Derek Thinks. You can call me Derek. If my nose or my voice is congested, before this podcast, I went on a nice quick walk outside in the cold. Actually, it's not so cold so much as it is breezy or windy where I reside. This past couple month or so, I should say, has been full of wind gusts and brief power outages. Of course, if you've listened to past episodes, I've given my opinion on the benefits of just going for walks outside. Maybe one of these days I'll record a podcast during one of my walks. Typically, I don't take forever. I maybe like half hour or whatever, or however long a podcast episode takes. That'll be the duration of my walk. Of course, after being outside, when the temperature is a little colder, once you're inside, at room temperature, it gets quite warm. So let's see. I talked about the benefits of the health benefits in the previous episode about like New Year's resolutions, and I talked about things like physical activity, like gym memberships, or like just starting slow when it comes to, say, strength training, or something simply going on walks, and eventually maybe graduating to jogging, and then further after jogging, further going to maybe running. I'm pretty sure that's how people do it. That's how I did it when during my peak running years, which isn't really much. I ran like during my peak running, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I ran like no more than 2 or 3 miles a day. But I have friends who run 10 miles a day, which these people are uh, well, these people would tell you that they start very slow as well. So I don't know. Maybe if I had kept it up, I'd be running 10 miles a day. But I don't want to talk about that this episode. Obvious the health benefits of exercise and the benefits on the mind uh, that exercise gives. You can find the sources, many sources online. Um, but in particular, I'd like to talk about diet. So, I think I've kind of been not so much a guinea pig, but every time there's like a new diet fad, except for maybe the past 2 or 3 years, I've kind of let myself go a little bit. But uh, every time in the past when there was like say like a new popular diet fad, I would uh, I would try it out, or not even a fad, but just even diet lifestyle that people recommend. I've tried it out for anywhere from say a month to uh, over a year. So I'd like to talk about that, and I'd like to talk about my experiences with that, and maybe if you don't have the best diet, or if you're looking for a way to better your nutrition, perhaps my experiences will sway you one way or another. So let's see. Of course, being a teenager, if for those who are parents of teenagers, or if you're yourself are a teenager, uh, you'll likely know that uh, adolescents, many adolescents seem to have the metabolism, like crazy metabolisms. As if they have like a hollow leg, where they're constantly eating because they're constantly burning it off due to just their fast and crazy metabolisms. Or maybe if a teenager, or your kid in particular, plays a sport, it seems like you can't get enough food inside him or her. And I was like that too. I was like that too, where I ate when I was an adolescent growing up. I ate crap, and it it didn't seem to have any ill effect. I had all this energy. I'd eat sweets, and I'd eat like those microwavable foods that you can hot pockets, or things similar to that, pizza rolls, right? Where I would just those would be the Eggo waffles. Eggo waffles was a huge thing. Those are things that I would eat. Of course, I mean, I guess you could say I was an athlete. I did track and field for three out of my 4 years in high school. Of course, to me, I wasn't very competitive. I didn't do it for the competition. I did it because all my buddies did it, or a few of my buddies did it, and I did it mostly for recreation. It was a no cut sport, so like literally anybody could join the track team, and if I recall correctly, our track and field team at my high school was uh, upwards of maybe 70 or 80 students, which is, if you're familiar with high school track and field, that's in a humongous uh, roster size. Um, but yeah, I would maintain this terrible diet of just crap, and frankly, of just foods that weren't the most nutritious for me. Um, and and I guess to what allowed me to along with being on the track team, what allowed me to continue this throughout the latter half of my uh, adolescence was that I also lifted weights extensively. I put myself on a strength training program, and of course, this was particularly for my senior project. So I would kind of fudge the whole nutrition part and say that, oh, I was eating based off of the food guide pyramid, which uh, uh, you know uh, children in the United States who went to public school, maybe private school as well, they taught this, but in particular in my case, I went to public school, and they kind of hammered the point when it comes to nutrition about the food guide pyramid, about how you needed 6 to 11 servings of grains and cereals and bread a day, and um, 3 to 4 servings of dairy, 2 to 3 servings of meat, uh, you know, uh, 3 to 5 servings of vegetables, etc. It would. I just remember the image where the food the the classification of food that you need most of would be on the bottom of the pyramid, because of course that's the the largest part. And then of course as you ascend the pyramid, it's food groups. It covers food groups that you need less of per day, and the very tip of the pyramid was represented sugars and fats, which they said use sparingly was the terminology they used. Now, of course, for those who uh, for those who were children during the whole food guide pyramid days, uh, and then grew and then went on to be adults, like myself and my friends. We all learned very quickly the older we got. Of course, with the government legislation, I believe it was could have been the USDA or the FDA or something. Some government organization. They had to revise it because it was discovered that having 6 to 11 servings of pastas, breads, and grains a day was not ideal for everyone, or for most people. So they had to revise it. I believe they even changed the shape from a pyramid to something else, and they further revised it. And of course, I'm no longer a child, so for those who have maybe for those who are currently parents now of very young children, um, maybe since then, of course I'm unaware, but since or nowadays I should say, um, there's maybe new guidelines and a new shape, or a new guide to nutrition that they're teaching uh, your children. I, sh- I sure as I sure as heck know it's not a pyramid, or at least I hope that it's no longer a pyramid shape, because of course, um, who really needs 6 to 11 servings of grains and breads and pastas, right? You know, of course. So going back to when I had the crazy metabolism, and I was doing track and strength training. You know, you could say that I had I had uh maybe um 6 to 11 or more servings of breads and pastas in the form of in just the form of cheeseburgers and hot dogs and etc. And those microwave foods that I previously mentioned. Um, but um but of course that was when I was a very active uh, teenager. Now, after I graduated high school, I went off to college, to a local community college, which was like an extension of high school. But of course, you know I had stopped the the physical activity, and and but continued the poor diet. And damn, so in that year, my first year of college, I had gained maybe 25 or 30 pounds of just like bad weight. Now, of course, if I kept my clothes on, people who observed me, simply told me, "Oh, you look like you look like a lot more filled out." But in reality, I knew that I had gained 25 pounds of just like crap weight, right? And it was at first, because I had gotten used to it, and I saw myself every day. I saw myself naked every day in the shower, and you see yourself with no shirt on, and the weight gain seemed gradual. you know um but then after a while, just based off of just um uh how I felt, it was not. I knew that my the circumstances regarding my diet were not ideal. So then I remember during my uh, second year of college, I wanted to maybe uh, shed what I had gained, or at least attempt to. Um, of course, uh, the physical activity wasn't as extensive as it was before college, but I had lifted a little weights, done little body weight exercises, but I think the most drastic thing I did was I tried to become a vegetarian, and so that I struck all uh, animal products in the form of meats and cheeses, but I had kept eggs. I continued to consume eggs, so I was a uh, ovo vegetarian. I guess I believe that's the term. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the term. And so so it initially was only supposed to last. Um, Initially, it was supposed to last maybe like 40 days, 40 or 45 days. Um, and of course, I did, I still consume breads and pastas, because technically they are vegetarian. But I also up my consuming of fruits. As much as I like desserts, and to this day, ever since I could remember, I was a massive sweet tooth. Um, However, during my vegetarian period, if you could call it, I uh, I kind of ditched the the cakes and pies and brownies, and occasionally I'd have like cookies and stuff, right? I'd have like cookies, and maybe like I'd have like a hard candy here or there, like a Jolly Rancher or something, right? Um, but uh, but I That's what I did. Initially it was supposed to be for 40 or 45 days. Um, but then, but then after that, it didn't seem very difficult to make those alternate choices. It didn't seem very difficult to say, you know what, I'm not gonna eat meat. It didn't seem difficult to forego a cheeseburger for, say, like uh, uh, you know, penne and red sauce, right? You know, um, of course, a red sauce with no meat. It just. And if I wanted, even then, if I wanted a burger, I'd go for like a vegetarian alternative, like the Boca burger, or uh, man, there were these very very tasty vegetarian patties, which I believe were made out of black beans and mushrooms. I don't know if they still sell them, but during my vegetarian years, I think I was addicted to those when I was like craving something really hearty. Um, so I had I noticed that I had lost the weight. I was losing some weight. Since I had gained 25 or 30 pounds the previous year, um, with this newfound vegetarian diet, which lasted, which went on for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. By 6 months, that's when I really started noticing a difference in my body. Uh, but unfortunately, I think I may have had better results had I, of course, this is my second year of college. So uh, during this time when I was a vegetarian, perhaps it was, uh, despite me improving my diet, so to speak, there were also adverse effects due to the partying. Of course, uh, I was, college parties is like the you see it as an American stereotype, but it's true. When you're in college and you want to be social, and of course these are your formative years of networking and partying and illicit activity. You want to party as much as you can. Every time you're invited out, you want to be that person. You want to be in with those kind of people. I guess at least I did. Maybe your maybe times have changed uh, in the past decade, and maybe kids, college students don't party as much. I don't know, but back then I enjoyed uh, just the abundance of alcohol and cigarettes and you know uh, whatnot. Whatnot, right? So that may have had an adverse effect on me, while I had improved my nutrition and had lost maybe 10 to 15 pounds that I had gained the previous year. Perhaps the partying may have prevented me from losing the full on 25 or 30 pounds that I had gained. But I did make progress, and I was a vegetarian for just over a year. About I recall correctly, maybe 13 months or so, 13 or 14 months or so. Um, you know, to be fair though, I wasn't super strict. I would have a bite of my friend's burger maybe once a month, or I'd have like a maybe like I get a chicken sandwich from a fast food place maybe once a month or so. Excuse me. Ooh, maybe once a month or so. So I wasn't strictly with it. I didn't have any. To me, it wasn't an ethical thing. It wasn't a moral or ethical thing about consuming animal products. It was simply an experiment to see how long I could do it and whether or not it would benefit me, which it did. Now, of course, all good things must come to an end. I don't recall what made me stop doing it. I just think, I believe maybe I just had a bite of a steak and then just never looked back ever since then or something. I don't know. I just went just maybe suddenly went back to eating meat because I just felt like it. Um, but yeah, so then of course, you know, when then I kind of went up and down this weird roller coaster where after I stopped this vegetarian diet, um, okay, so then but the partying continued. So then I had ping ponged back and I gained another 20 pounds. And it was rough. I remember graduating college after I went through 5 years of college. I was a fifth year and I'm a fifth year senior, and 5 years of college. I had ballooned up. Shoot, let me see. maybe 40, oh, near 40 pounds, what I had initially weighed before I started college. So within that 5 year span, I went up, up 25, down 15, uh, up 10, down 5. Just I had roller coastered. And I remember, uh, in particular, during my college graduation, I had since I transferred to the university. I'd spent 2 years at a 2 year college, and then I had spent 3 years at the university. And I remember, uh, I just remember looking at my graduation pictures, and man, I was, I mean, even with the just the gown, I could tell that, man, I had ballooned up. So then, um, fast forward a year or so after graduation, I decided I had to do something about it. Um, so then I had me and my buddy had kind of participated, or had organized our own strength training program. We'd lift heavy weights, like uh, 3 times a week, heavy weights, and but alongside that, it was a high. We also had a high protein diet. We'd consume maybe upwards of some days 100 grams of protein a day. And so this high protein diet, and of course it wasn't just meats. It was also things like beans and legumes. But the whole point to it was just consumption. Just when you felt hungry, you just got to eat, because since we're lifting, you got to eat as much as you can and lift. And uh, and from that, I had lost about 15 pounds. That was very that was very shocking, because I think, of course, it had something to do with the fitness program that my buddy and I had put ourselves on. But at the same time, with the spike in the consumption of protein, as well as just the muscle growth from lifting these heavy weights, it it allowed our metabolisms to just torch the fat. And and we kept that up, man. I want to say we kept that up for uh maybe like 6 months. It was an intensive 6 months, 3 days a week, or yeah, 3 days per week, of just like 2 hours a day of lifting heavy weights, or 90 minutes a day of lifting heavy weights, and then just eating as much protein, good and so-called bad protein, as you can. And man, as just I just remember feeling enormous, even though the scale didn't tell me that I was, or told me that I wasn't as big as I was before I did the diet and workout. Um, so yeah, so a good 6 months, and of course during this time, of course the smoking and drinking and partying and other things still was uh in its full force, so to speak. Um, and then there is a period of time, the year after, man. Just thinking about it, God, I went up and down and up and down and up and down in weight, and maybe it's not the healthiest, especially for just like my internal organs, but it also wasn't the healthiest. Just mentally, looking yourself in the mirror and just saying like, oh man, what I used to be, or this, or man, what how come I'd let myself go, and and of course that's something I still think about today, especially since I haven't lifted a weight or done a push-up or whatever, or really ran a mile in maybe a couple years now. But um but I remember the year after that intensive weight training program with the high protein intake, I had I had I had I had put myself, well, I was, due to some circumstances, I was uh not feeling so good about myself, just even though I felt big and strong, and and by all counts looked pretty decent, you know uh, I wasn't feeling my best, just in my head. The perception of myself, uh wasn't the best. And I had so just as a way, just I don't know if it was so much as a punishment, or a I don't know if it was so much a punishment, or just a way to try to like distract myself, but I started running. And it would be just a mile a day. Then I'd go to 1.5 miles a day. Then I'd go to 2 miles a day, and then some days would be 3 miles a day. But I'd run every day, at least one and a half, between 1.5 to 3 miles every day. And of course, to me it wasn't so much the distance; it was more so the time. And by I guess by runner standards, I wasn't very good, but I had a steady time of uh of running 2 miles in uh in in about 15 minutes. So that's 7.5 minutes per mile. And I had done that. I had done that for maybe 6 months or so. Another, yeah, I don't know, periods of 6 months, maybe 4 months, or 4 to 6 months. I'll say, I don't know. It's been a number of years now, but I went running every day. I kind of did. I also did yoga. Man, I in the beginning, when I started rambling about this topic, I wanted to focus solely on nutrition, but not now. I'm also talking about just my personal workout plans throughout the years. But of course, this is my podcast, and I can talk about whatever I want, right? Maybe talking about just the whole fitness and nutrition, or nutrition and fitness. Maybe it'll give you some insight on how to maybe the steps that you want to take to improve your fitness or nutrition. Um, but when I went running, I had I had when I went running, I also had an unhealthy obsession with my body image. You know, like the running was making me very skinny. Um, like it was as if I had lost all the muscle I had gained from the year before, because I did the resistance exercises that I did during this running period was strictly body weight stuff, right? I didn't lift heavy weights, so I think I was able, looking back, I was able to maintain a uh, some good muscle, but at the same time, I was I was abusing my body, not only with the running every day. I took no rest days. I ran, you know just 2 to 3 miles, 1.5 to 3 miles every day. But it was also the diet. I had eaten virtually nothing except for just, like, you know uh, fruits in the form of like shakes. And I won't even put protein powder into these things. I would just eat fruits. Um, just like berries, or like I'd eat like an apple and a banana and an orange. That was my meal. That was like my breakfast, and then like lunch would be like like another apple and like a cup of coffee or something, and then like then like dinner would maybe be like another apple, a banana, a carrot, and a baked potato or something, right? I was burning the calories, but I wasn't putting them enough of them in, and in that way I was abusing my body. I had very little consumption of protein, which is crazy. Like the year before I was jacking up to 100 grams of protein a day sometimes, and then the next summer I was just running, doing nothing but running and push-ups and eating fruit, you know and but I had gone down to below I had gone down to below my weight when I was a senior in high school. As low as maybe 112 pounds during that year, which um you know which for me, even though I'm of short stature, um was low. Just for reference, when I was lifting heavy weights and eating all that meat and beans and stuff, I was upwards of, say maybe 145 pounds. And then the next summer, after doing all this running and eating nothing but fruit, I had gone down to about 112, maybe 115, maybe 112 is an exaggeration, but 115, which was below what I weighed in my senior year of high school. And so, if you can do the math, that's the 30 pounds that I lost, right? I mean, shoot, my second year of college, I wanted desperately to lose the 30 pounds that I gained the previous year, but I ended up losing 30 pounds a few years later, but in a very unhealthy way. So then, you know, it was just it was just awful, but a lot of people complimented, like, man, you look thin, you look fit, you look good, but in reality, I was uh, avoiding a healthy diet daily. Sometimes I would binge, which is probably the worst of it all. Sometimes I would binge, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, on just like garbage food. The same food that the same microwavable fast food, whatever, that I talked about, consuming when I was younger. I would maybe do that once a week or once every 2 weeks, and then go back to just eating nothing but fruit, which kind of did probably put my kidneys and my blood sugar out of whack and all that. But of course I was uh, I was I guess slightly underweight, if you go by body mass index, which we all should know by now is not the best indicator of a person's fitness. But yeah, so then after that, you know after that, I again, shoot, I don't know what resulted what allowed the change, but then for the next couple of years, up until a couple of years ago, before I just didn't really care about my diet or exercise, I would keep a steady diet of I would keep a more balanced diet, like as I would occasionally cheat with the fast food. I'd have a cheat day and not feel guilty about it, but mostly um I'd eat things like uh, chicken and vegetables. I'd eat a lot of soups and salads, which are, of course, it's a no brainer that if you eat a nice light soup or salad for a couple meals a day, it can benefit you greatly. Of course, I enjoy chicken, and sometimes I eat red meat. you know and the and then my fitness, my exercise would include just like cardio things like jump roping, and of course I continued the push-ups. For a while I was the king of the push-ups. I love the push-ups, man. I would do upwards of 1,000 to 1,500 a day, which is, if you add it up every day for for a couple of years, that's a buttload of push-ups. But yeah, I would do that, and I don't know, that was the best course of action, I guess, for me. Uh, just a balance a good balance of a diet and a and exercise. Of course, so you would supplement the exercise with maybe something like yoga, or just an occasional, just like long walk, hour or 90-minute walk outside in nature, just as a way to break the monotony of just whatever it was that I did for fitness during that 3 year period. Um, but yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I guess the reason why I wanted to talk about that, just to go back, to my whole point of why I decided to talk about this as my topic for today's episode, is that uh I think I want to revisit, you know since I'd spent the last 2 years not really caring about my diet, or what I ate, or working out, or whatever, or fitness, nutrition, all that stuff. Maybe I kind of want to get back into it, and not so much as like a resolution kind of thing for the new year or whatever, but just more so just as a way to to just keep my mind and body sharp. You know, I couldn't really care less about losing the weight, or just like adding years to my life. To be honest, but I just want to just keep my mind and body sharp while I'm able to do it. While I'm able, in my relatively young age, you know, to just you know keep it up, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Um, so okay, I guess I can conclude here. I rambled on for basically one topic, which doesn't normally happen, I guess. Hasn't happened yet, really. Usually I jump around from topic to topic. So if you want to contact me, and you want to, I'll pimp my social media. If you want to hit me up with questions, comments, feedback, if you want to just fill me in on what your New Year's resolution is, or you want to fill me in on what kind of exercise or diet that you do, or what kind of fitness and nutrition you feel has been the most beneficial for you. You can find me at derickthinks on Twitter and Instagram. That's DERICKTHINKS. You can also check out, if you're listening to this on SoundCloud, you can leave a comment there, or if you're listening on YouTube, the good old YouTube, you can leave a comment there as well. Yeah, that's DERICKTHINKS. Now I want to read a poem here. It's by Marge Piercy. It is titled "The Market Economy." Suppose some peddler offered you can have a color TV, but your baby will be born with a crooked spine. You can have polyvinyl cups and wash and wear suits, but it will cost you your left lung rotted with cancer. Suppose somebody offered you a frozen pre-cooked dinner every night for 10 years, but at the end your colon dies and then you do. Slowly and with much pain. You get a house in the suburbs, but you work in a new plastics factory and die at 51, when your kidneys turn off. But where else will you work? Where else can you rent but Smog City? The only houses for sale are under the yellow sky. You've been out of work for a year and they're hiring at the plastics factory. Don't read the fine print. There isn't any.